Hi, and welcome back. My usual sorries for not being here. It's been a while, I know. It's now the summer, so I can hopefully produce some more content. I wanted to go ahead and talk one more time about a subject that I'm very familiar with and that I've got a lot of personal experience with. Something I just wanted to cover again, and that is Herbivore Guys. So I've done 2 so far. One more time for people who don't know what they are. Herbivore Guys. They're that special subset of people in Japan. They're young men who don't want to... essentially don't want to get married, but it's more than that. They're kind of tuned out from society. They're not what's called a hikikomori, which is the kind of person who's kind of like a hermit in Japanese society. They're not quite like that. They do participate in society, but they're the kind of people who, you know, spend their time going through like cute cat videos and things like that. They just don't... they're not the kind of people who... they're the kind of guys who just don't want to... essentially, they don't want to hurt anybody. So they're not really out there looking for a mate. They're much more involved in their hobbies. And to complement that, I also talked about parasite singles. Parasite singles are typically women who will, you know, get some small job, and they'll typically live off of their parents until they're in their 40s, 50s, and beyond, because it's an easy way for them to just, you know, live rent-free, essentially, and use their own money to do whatever they want. So this video, I'm going to do 2 things. Like, this is another adding on to like a story about Herbivore Guys. And it's also going to be one of my student stories, because it centers around a student. And that student I refer to, as you can see in the title, called the Kira Kira Man. And I'll explain that in a minute if you don't know what Kira Kira means. But, you know, to tie it all together, I guess what I've been getting at through all of this, it's not just, I don't know the best way to say, it's not just these small phenomena that have been happening in Japan. I think that they represent like some broader, you know, social issues. Really what it is, and this is just what I feel, is it's so hard in modern day for men and women to kind of connect with each other, you know? And like for various different reasons, it's so hard to like make that connection and really break through and find the person that you want to be with for the rest of your life. And even, you know, even if that's not your goal, like that's the typical goal, is you want someone to kind of be your partner. But even if that's not your goal, relationships are just hard nowadays. And it's funny because if you think about it, you know, survival conditions have never been easier. I mean, maybe that's the reason why. Survival conditions have never been easier, so for some reason people find it so hard to find that kind of perfect mate. Maybe that's what it is just all in all, we have everything so good that it needs to be perfect. If you find somebody who just, you know, doesn't match up to you in one small way, like they can just, you can eliminate them, you know, like much sooner than you really should. So that kind of phenomenon really fascinates me. And all the time that I was there in Japan, I would see this weird phenomenon of mostly girls who are really cool. They're like, you know, I personally think Japanese ladies, just in a general sense, are very beautiful, because I've always liked like long dark hair. But even if it's not your thing, you know, just in a general sense, I think they're very attractive women. And I was just struck by how hard it seems for a lot of them to find a guy. When I was there, my wife's sister, she's got 3 sisters, and one of them who was, you know, right there in that perfect age for like finding a mate. She was like 25 at the time, and she was great. Like, she was really nice to me. In fact, she's my best friend in Japan now, like to this day. She's really nice. She's a really caring person, and she's really beautiful. And I thought, wow, like, if you were in America, the guys would be all over you, right? But for some reason, Japanese guys, it's not like there's like all bad guys. You know, there's really attractive, really, you know, good guys. But for some reason, she found it so hard to, kind of find one and like connect with one. And I found so many women that I knew, really good looking, attractive young women, and they just could not find partners. They could not find, anyone to be with. And they would use this service called Omiai. And if you don't know what that is, Omiai is this kind of it has like its traditional roots. Of course, nowadays with like internet and things like that, it's morphed. But in its essential sense, it's the same thing. It's this service where you can't find somebody, so you have this arranged kind of meeting between two people who, really, really want to get married. And the service was ridiculous as far as like price. She was telling me she was paying something around the equivalent of about $5,000. And, mind you, you're not bound in contract to marry this person, so there's no guarantees of anything, $5,000 that she was paying for this Omiai service was just for access, to the possibility of guys that she might want to marry. But, how the hell do you know that, just from, like, meeting them at some formal meeting, So, I don't know, like, there could be some, even in modern times, for whom that really works out well with. But I've never personally seen it work out very well. Like, Omiai, because you're just meeting someone from the first time, it's like, I've been married for 10 years, and there's many things where I don't feel like I know my wife fully well. I don't feel like she knows me fully well. How the hell are you going to make the decision to marry someone after you've met them, just really quick and casual? So it just seems like that's, that one particular thing. But again, it's this offshoot of the central point that I'm talking about, which is, for some reason, it's so hard for Japanese men and women to get together. And I'm going to tell you, in my mind, just the absolute classic story of that happening. And this was the Kira Kira guy. So, you're asking yourself, if you don't know, what on earth is Kira Kira? Well, Kira Kira means, it's this Japanese onomatopoeic word for, like, sparkling, like sparkle, sparkle. And what it means in this context was, there was a guy that I was teaching, back when I was teaching in Japan. One of my coworkers was this blonde American girl. And, for me, all the guys, like, they don't really mean much to me as far as, like, attractiveness, because, of course, I'm not looking for that. So, in my eyes, personally, it's really hard for me to tell an attractive man, So, like, all my life, I've really been fascinated sometimes when I see, like, the list of the world's, 50 sexiest men or whatever. And I'm looking at them like, this guy just looks like a normal guy, Like, there are some people that I can understand, like, when they say, like, oh, Brad Pitt, he's got the kind of model-type face that, okay, I could see why women are attracted to that. But a lot of other men who are on there, like, I don't know, Leonardo DiCaprio, to me, he just looks like a regular dude. Like, I don't really know what the whole fuss is about. But in either case, this guy was one of those kind of guys. This guy that I was teaching, he was a member of this group, and I think at the time he was about 25 to 26. And so I would go in and teach him. I think that he had this group on the weekends, and he was a young guy, and in his group there was an older gentleman that I'd been teaching literally from, like, since day one that I went to Japan. Like, he was one of the first people that I met. And that older guy, his English was really bad. Like, even though I had been teaching him for 5 years, he just has this kind of pronunciation, and he just has this kind of he's kind of reached that plateau with his English learning abilities, and it's really, really hard to go up above that, right? But he was paired up with this younger guy whose name, off the top of my head, just eludes me, but so I would teach them, right? And then I got this new American coworker, this young, like, attractive blonde girl. And in fact, at the time that I'd left, there was actually a few young ladies who were, like, coming in. So there was, like, about 4 really attractive young girls that, like, were working with me. just, kind of coincidentally. I don't know if they were trying to, to change the image of the place, but so that's how it was. Like, there was, a few old people like me, or older, and there were like these young ladies that they had, and that blonde said to another one of the young girls, "Oh, have you taught that Kira Kira guy?" And I was like, what do you mean Kira Kira? She's like, yeah, like Sparkle Sparkle. And she's like, what do you mean? Yeah, like, she said, he's the kind of guy who, like, he's so attractive that, like in animes, when you have like this really like handsome guy that has like sparkles all around him, like, some Sailor Moon, kind of like, when they see the kind of guy that they like, there'll be like sparkles all around him, Kira Kira. Apparently that guy was this handsome to her. Like, he was so handsome that she would get distracted. Like, she would say that to us. She's like, yeah, it's really hard to teach that group because that guy is just so attractive. I was like, really? Okay. Like, of course it's not a problem for me, but, it's just kind of how it is. So I thought that's kind of fascinating. Well, so you might think, like, oh, okay, so he was really, like, handsome, so he was arrogant. No. This guy was not arrogant at all. In fact, he was one of just the absolute most genuinely nicest guys that I'd ever met. Like, he was so nice. He would, like, make a big effort to, like, always have a nice smile for you, and, always say something very polite. He would listen intently. He would take notes. Like, he was just the best student. He was so respectful. And, I've talked a lot about Japanese people and how sometimes with Japanese people there's this obvious mask, right? There's this obvious kind of a, like, whatever it is that they're saying to you, you take it with a grain of salt because you know that they're just saying it because it's part of the social rule. They kind of have to, right? This guy did not give you that impression at all. Like, he was seriously, just genuinely a very nice guy. So you pair those two things, extremely handsome to the point where the girls are like swooning over him. Oh, Mr. Sparkle Sparkle. With very, 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 very nice. Pair that with, like, he's very intelligent, He didn't graduate from, like, I don't think that he graduated from Todai. He didn't graduate from Tokyo University, which is like the #1. But he did graduate from something like that. And he was working at NEC. So he was working at like one of the biggest corporations, in Japan. And, he was a young guy, but he just had this future all ahead of him. This guy's just like, he's on this path to be, like, maybe chairman of the board one day. You never know. Like, he's starting off very young, and if you know, like, what typically it is in Japan, it's typically lifetime employment. So whenever you get a foot into one of these companies, just getting that foot in, you're kind of guaranteeing yourself a lifetime of success. So it's like this kid has everything going for him. And, like, to top it off, his English was fantastic. He was really good in English. Because he was the kind of person who really genuinely studied hard and, paid attention and, especially took notes. That was a big thing you can tell with me. Yeah, I really, really like this guy. So, why is all of this, like, important or relevant to the discussion? Well, you might get it. You might understand where this is going. The Kira Kira man, the guy who just tips the scales on all the axes to which it seems that women really want when they're looking for a partner. He's handsome. He's got a great attitude. He's got a great future. He's got money, stability. But, and you might see this coming, predictably, about every single time that I taught, just about every single time, we would eventually get back to, like we would have, like, free discussions at the beginning of class before we actually, like, dipped our toes into some sort of a, grammar discussion. We would always have some free topic of conversation, And I remember so many times that he kept telling me that he really wants a girlfriend and he couldn't find a girlfriend. And, you know, that was really hard to believe, but it's just kind of how he was. I guess he had some sort of streak of shyness to him, especially like when he's face to face, you know, with a woman. He just has this kind of streak of shyness that just holds him back. But he's got everything. You know, he's got every other thing that, like, you know, any girl would want. You know, I've got like, not even the Japanese, but the American, the foreign girls are swooning over him. So you know the Japanese girls, like, feel the same way. But every week, he would always say, oh, I wish I could find a girlfriend. Oh, have you found a girlfriend yet? No, not yet, you know. And it was funny because, you know, he was paired up with that older guy that I was saying. And that older guy was, he must have been like in his late 40s, early 50s. And he already had he has like a teenage daughter and maybe like a 10-year-old son. And, you know, he had like so much more life experience. And he would like spend his time laughing at, you know, the kid man. He would spend his time, like, you know, like always poking fun of him, you know, oh, you can't find a date this week, you know, like, it was a really funny dynamic between those two, you know, because if you know the relationship between, you know, senpai and kohai, senpai, the older guy, he could say whatever he wanted, you know, he could make fun of him as much as he wanted. Kira man, he would just have to kind of like, you know, bow his head, oh, you got me, you know, and just kind of take it because, you know, he's kohai. But, you know, it kind of like showed that even though you can be, you know, every single thing or have everything go towards you, no, it's a better way to say it. You could have all the base advantages that would typically lead to a good life, but still it doesn't always lead you there. It's not a guaranteed path. You know what I mean? So that's why I felt really bad for this guy. You know, you've got this 26-year-old guy who's just really pining for a girlfriend, but he just can't find one. And that's the thing is, like, I don't know if he couldn't find one because he couldn't find one, or he just didn't. Again, I don't know what the best way to say what this is maybe he gets to that situation where he's about to, like, you know, he's about to, like, break through and kind of communicate with somebody, but he just can't. He just has this shyness, or he just has this kind of, you know, kind of like hands-off, you know, that kind of nice guy, hands-off kind of spirit that just, like, keeps him from getting into relationships. Whereas the bad boy type, you know, doesn't mind saying something rude or stupid in front of a girl, you know, like, doesn't put her on this pedestal. And so he tends to have more success, you know. Whereas this nice guy, he'll exclude himself because of his politeness. It's really ironic, you know. And again, that just seems to me to go to this kind of thing where modern people, I would say it happens a lot in America too, but if it happens in America, it seems like it's like a step or two, a degree or two above in Japan, like with formality, because they're much more formal people than Americans are, you know. So I don't know, like, I wouldn't know how to categorize him. He's definitely not a parasite single. He lives on his own, he makes his own money. And it's hard to put him into the herbivore guy category because he has that shyness that tends to, like, you know, make him sit on the outside and be the herbivore. But at the same time, herbivore guys, I think what typically makes an herbivore guy is the fact that they don't really care anymore. Like, they genuinely don't care about getting married. You know, like, they don't really want to do it anymore. Like, if you know, gave them the prospect of, you know, like, being like, oh, there's this girl who likes you, they would say, well, you know, if I date her, that'll take time away from my cat videos, and we can't have that, you know what I mean? Like, whereas this guy, like, all he talked about, you know, was like, I want to get married, and it just could not happen for him, you know? So I really felt bad for the guy in that regard. And I felt bad for like a lot of young Japanese who are just growing up in this time, who just cannot seem to find their partner, you know? Another person that I was working with at the time, you know, like, she was basically in the same boat as he is. I mean, she was independent to where she was like living on her own, making her own money, but she was working in, you know, this eikaiwa, this English conversation school. So she wasn't as well set up as the Kira Kira man. The Kira Kira man, like I said, he was a little bit younger than her, and he was very, very handsome, and he was working for just a great big company with a great future ahead of him. This girl who I worked with, I thought she was very attractive. Like, she wasn't like a supermodel, but she was a very attractive girl. And she was also very nice. She was really intelligent. And she was working for, you know, this eikaiwa, which is not, you know, it's not like it's a bad future. It's just that it's not the same as working for like a, you know, Toshiba or Toyota or, you know, like some big name Japanese company. It's not quite the same as that. But she was in that same boat, you know, and I found myself in the position where I was always cheering her on. She would always like give me updates, like, oh, I still can't find this guy, and, you know, I don't know, I felt like it was kind of sad. I felt like, I feel like even these days in America, it happens to where it's hard for people to kind of connect. And I think that the internet has a whole lot to do with that. You know, it's, in some ways, it's pretty obvious, you know, like, if you spend your day, like, you know, like, I think a lot of guys will do the thing where, like, they'll watch porn, and it kind of warps their sense when they, you know, actually get face-to-face with an actual woman, right? And I think that women, you know, like, of course, some of them will watch porn too, but for them, it's more like, you know, like watching their favorite movie, their favorite Hollywood actor, you know, and they also see this kind of ideal that, you know, maybe life really can't pan out to. But we're living in a time where it's like you don't really have to come out of that dream, you know? You don't have to come out. Like, you could just sit by and kind of expect it and, you know, live out your fantasies like on the big screen, because we're living in this time where, you know, we're constantly being pandered to. You know, there's always going to be like the next movie that's going to come out, the next, you know, big thrill, the next sporting event, the next whatever that'll kind of keep your life occupied in that meantime, you know? So a lot of us, if you make enough to where you can support yourself, then it's like everybody's kind of building up their little island on their own, you know, kind of keeping to themselves. And in the midst of that, I think a lot of people are finding that a partner would just kind of get in the way. Like, I'm not quite agreeing that that is always the case. I think a partner could certainly enhance if you find the right partner, but I'm just saying that I think a lot of people feel that way. That a lot of people would rather have the fun than, you know, build a relationship, because it's a lot harder work than it looks. So, in either case, I hope that was amusing, because, again, this guy, I'll never forget this guy. Like, I would just boggle my mind. How does the person have all the things, not just one, not just two, but like all the things that a woman is looking for, and he still, you know, he still can't do it. He still can't make that breakthrough. So, anyway, food for thought. If you know anything similar to this, if you know any stories that are similar to this, similar to Herbivore Guys, you know, that's why I keep on coming back to this topic, because it's just fascinating to me. Why are there so many guys who just bow out of the dating market? Why are there so many girls who just bow out, who just would rather, you know, spend their money on vacation or whatever it is instead of getting married? And it's the kind of thing where I feel like it's a mystery that's just never going to unravel, or it's going to unravel itself in very, very slow, small stages. And I don't know, it's the kind of topic that I could just go on and on about forever. So, yeah, if there's anything you can add, of course, I'd like to hear it. So leave your comments down below. Let me know what your thoughts. 見てくれてありがとうございます。久しぶりです。 I'm sorry it's been a long time, but I hope you enjoyed. Hey, sayonara.